I never thought betrayal would wear a familiar face. People read stories like this online and think, that could never be me. But it was me. It started the night I found out my husband was sleeping with my brother. The two people who once swore they loved me most. There's a sound silence makes right after your heart breaks. It's not crying, it's not screaming. It's like every clock in the world stops ticking just to listen. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just stared at the photo on my phone, his hands on my brother's back, and something inside me stopped existing. Betrayal isn't just pain. It's the quiet realization that the people you would have died for were the ones digging your grave. My name is Lena Carter. I grew up in a quiet Oregon suburb where every house looked the same and every secret had an echo. My brother Noah was 2 years younger. Golden hair, golden smile, the golden child. If you flipped through our family photo albums, you'd think I was the friend who came over too often, not the daughter. Mom adored him. She said he needed more attention because he was sensitive. I learned that sensitive meant he could do whatever he wanted. When Noah broke a neighbor's window with a baseball, Mom baked cookies for the neighbors to apologize, and somehow, I was grounded for not watching him. When he failed a math test, she made me tutor him. When he called me names or ruined my drawings, she'd laugh. He's just teasing, Lena. That's what brothers do. But that teasing grew teeth. By middle school, he'd steal my diary and read it out loud to his friends. When I cried, Mom said I was overreacting. Dad worked too much to notice. The summer before I turned 16, Noah shoved me into the pool in front of everyone at a barbecue. I hit my head on the edge, nearly blacked out. Everyone laughed, except me. That was the first time I realized humiliation could feel heavier than pain. By the time we reached high school, I stopped fighting back. I learned that in my family, silence was survival. Noah grew louder. I grew smaller. He drank, skipped class, broke rules. I followed them so perfectly that I became invisible. The only person who ever saw through the chaos was my grandmother. She'd whisper, "Sweetheart, you don't have to earn love. If they can't see you, it's their blindness, not your invisibility." I didn't understand it then, but I do now. When I left for college, it felt like stepping out of a cage I didn't know I was in. Noah stayed behind, drifting through jobs, girlfriends, and Mom's endless forgiveness. I stopped visiting home after graduation. Every call with Mom ended the same way. "You know your brother's having a hard time. Maybe you should help him." "No, thank you. I thought distance would save me." It did, but none for a while. That's where Ethan came in. We met at a publishing conference in Seattle. He was quiet, sharp, and the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, which, for someone like me, was dangerous. When you've spent your whole life unseen, the first person who really looks at you can feel like salvation. Ethan and I fit easily. He was a copy editor. I was an assistant editor climbing through long hours and low pay. We bonded over books, bad coffee, and the shared ache of wanting more out of life. A year later, we moved in together. 2 years later, we married. For the first time in my life, my world had symmetry, laughter in the kitchen, late-night talks, plans for a family we hadn't even started yet. He wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But he was kind. He'd leave notes in my lunch bag. "Remember, you make hard days look easy." He never raised his voice. When Mom called to guilt me about Noah, he'd squeeze my hand and mouth, "Don't answer." He became my peace. And that peace was the one thing my family never gave me. For years, I avoided home. Birthdays were calls, holidays were excuses. Ethan never pressured me, but one Christmas, he said, "Maybe you should see them again." Closure isn't just for endings, so I agreed. We drove 5 hours back to my parents' house. Noah greeted us at the door like nothing had ever happened. Same grin, same arrogance. He was still living there, 30 and jobless, charming as ever. Mom hugged him before she hugged me. "You look tired," she said to me, then turned to Ethan. "You, on the other hand, look wonderful." Dinner was a performance. Noah dominated every conversation. Mom laughed at every word. Dad stared at his plate. Ethan tried to ease the tension, but by dessert, Noah had already insulted my job, my looks, and the fact that we didn't have children yet. Ethan stayed polite, but his jaw clenched the way it did when he wanted to say something but chose peace instead. That night, as we drove back to the hotel, he said softly, "You weren't exaggerating." And for the first time, I didn't feel crazy for how my family treated me. After that, Ethan became protective of me around them. Firm, quiet, decisive. When Noah called later asking to crash with us for a week, I was ready to say no. But Ethan said, "He's your brother. Maybe he just needs a chance." And that was the moment everything began to fall apart. The moment the door opened not just to my brother, but to everything dark that had been waiting inside him. Noah moved in on a gray Wednesday that smelled like rain and bad decisions. He came with 2 duffel bags, a half-broken guitar, and that same smug smile I'd grown up hating. Mom had paid his bus ticket. "Just until he finds a job," Ethan reminded me. 2 weeks, I said. Not a day more. At first, it was civil. He washed dishes, helped with groceries, even complimented my cooking. Ethan was relieved. See? He's trying. But I knew Noah. The silence between his smiles carried old venom. Small things began to shift. My perfume went missing. Ethan started wearing cologne he'd never liked before. Noah's brand. Late at night, I'd hear muffled laughter from the living room. When I asked what was funny, both said, "Nothing." One Sunday, while folding laundry, I found one of my silk blouses in Noah's drawer. He laughed. "Calm down, sis. Must have fallen in by mistake." Ethan looked embarrassed, but said nothing. I told myself not to overreact. I'd promised I'd changed, that paranoia wouldn't rule me, yet every morning the air felt heavier. Ethan's phone vibrated more often. He smiled at texts he never shared. Once, when I walked in, he tilted the screen away. By the 3rd week, Noah hadn't looked for work. He slept late, drank my wine, and treated our apartment like a vacation home. The night I asked him to leave, Ethan intervened. "He just needs time," he said. "He's had 30 years of it," I answered. Noah smirked. "Still bossy, huh?" "Guess some women never change." Ethan told him to apologize. He did, barely. Then, the next morning, I found Ethan's favorite mug shattered on the counter, my photo from college lying face down beside it. It wasn't just tension anymore. Something unseen was crawling under the surface, and I was the only one who could feel its breath. It happened so quietly that for weeks I doubted it was real. Gaslighting doesn't always come from words. Sometimes it comes from smiles that insist nothing's wrong. One evening, Ethan said he was meeting a client. He left his laptop open. While closing the lid, a message flashed across the screen. "Noah, same time tomorrow?" Ethan, "Can't wait." I stared until the cursor stopped blinking. Then I closed the laptop, my heart oddly calm, like I'd been expecting this all along. I didn't confront them. Instead, I observed. They shared glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Ethan changed his password. Noah started going out exactly when Ethan did. The universe eventually confirms what the soul already knows. 2 weeks later, I pretended to work late, came home early, and found the lights dimmed, 2 wine glasses on the counter, and voices in our bedroom. Laughter. Then silence. When I opened the door, time fractured. Ethan froze. Noah didn't. He leaned back on my sheets, eyes locked on me, and said almost gently, "Guess you found out." My body didn't move. My voice did. "Get out." Ethan stammered something about mistakes, confusion, needing therapy. Noah just smirked. "You always wanted everything perfect, Lena. Now you finally see what imperfect looks like." I remember picking up the wedding photo from the nightstand and throwing it against the wall. It shattered like my chest. Ethan tried to reach for me. "I love you." No, I said. "You loved having someone who never questioned you." "That's not love." Noah left that night, duffel bag and all. Ethan stayed until morning, crying on the couch. I watched the sunrise from the balcony, realizing I'd survived something most people don't come back from: the death of trust. The divorce was quick, cold, efficient. My lawyer called it textbook infidelity. But textbooks don't bleed. Mom called every day. He's your brother. Lena, you can't hate him forever. I hung up. Then Dad called once. The first call he'd made in years. I'm proud of you for leaving, he said quietly. I should have left your mother a long time ago. That was the closest thing to love he'd ever given me. The weeks after felt like walking through smoke. Friends tiptoed around me. Coworkers whispered. I went through motions: wake, shower, work, sleep. But my reflection looked like someone else's life wearing my face. Therapy became my oxygen. My therapist, Dana, said betrayal trauma rewires the brain. It's not heartbreak, it's identity theft. She was right. I didn't know who I was without the roles of wife and sister. One night, I opened the old box of childhood photos. Every smile looked staged, every hand on my shoulder heavy. In one picture, Noah and I stood beside Mom's garden. He was holding a toy sword. I was holding nothing. The caption read, "My two angels." I laughed until I cried. Ethan tried reaching out once more. A letter, not an email. He wrote that he was sorry for losing control, that it wasn't love, it was confusion. But you can't confuse betrayal. It's deliberate. I burned the letter in the kitchen sink, watched the paper curl into silence. Then came the shock that twisted everything again. Mom showed up uninvited. Her eyes were swollen, hands shaking. Your father left, she said. He found out about the money. What money? Turns out she'd been secretly sending Noah thousands of dollars for years. Rent, tuition, bail, whatever excuse he made up. When Dad discovered the bank statements, he packed his bags. She looked at me like a drowning woman asking another for water. He's still your brother. Lena, he has no one. I told her the truth she never wanted to hear. He had everyone. He just burned us all. She slapped me. It didn't hurt. I just felt empty. That night, I decided something important. Closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from choosing silence when chaos begs for attention. So I blocked every number. Noah's, Mom's, even Ethan's. And for the first time in my life, the world was quiet enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Got it. Here are the closing parts of Blood Betrayal, full edition in the same voice and cinematic rhythm. 3,000 words total, 2 long sections. A month after I cut everyone off, a single envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address. Just my name in my mother's looping handwriting. I almost threw it away. Curiosity 1. Inside was a letter and a folded photograph. Old, sun-bleached, the edges soft. In the picture, Mom was maybe 25, standing beside a man who wasn't my father. His hand rested on her belly. The letter began, Lena, before you hate me completely, you deserve to know the truth about Noah. I sat down on the floor. My pulse filled the room. When I married your father, I was already pregnant. He knew, but he married me anyway. He promised to raise the baby as his own if I never told anyone. Noah was that baby. Every memory of favoritism, every moment she protected him, rearranged itself in my head like a cruel puzzle clicking into place. She continued, I thought I could love you both the same, but I was terrified that if your father ever found out, he'd leave. So I overloved Noah and underloved you. It was wrong. I see that now. There were tear stains on the paper. I should have felt compassion. Instead, I felt numb. After your father left, I realized the truth always finds a way to breathe. I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday you'll understand I wasn't protecting Noah. I was protecting my own guilt. I folded the letter back into its envelope and stared at the ceiling. For years, I had believed I was born invisible. Now I knew I'd been made invisible. The next morning, I called my father. He answered on the second ring. She told you, didn't she? He said. Yes. I should have told you when you were old enough. I thought silence was mercy, he paused. I loved you because you were mine, Lena. I tolerated him because he wasn't. Maybe that's why we all ended up broken. We met a week later for coffee. It was the first time he'd hugged me in years. His arms felt lighter, as if confession had unchained him too. That night, I reread Mom's letter and realized forgiveness doesn't always require permission. Sometimes you forgive to stop the inheritance of pain. I wrote her back, I forgive you, but not to make you feel better, to make sure I don't become you. Then I sealed the envelope and mailed it without a return address. A few days later, a message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. Noah, I heard about Mom. She's sick. You should call her. I didn't respond. Instead, I whispered into the dark, this is the last time your name touches my life. And for once, the silence agreed. Healing is embarrassingly slow. It doesn't look cinematic. It looks like watering a plant you're not sure will live. Months passed. The apartment felt less like a hiding place and more like a beginning. I painted the walls white, bought new sheets, learned how to sleep without checking my phone. In therapy, Dana asked, what would closure look like if you couldn't talk to any of them again? I said, peace, she smiled. Then start there. So I did. I started walking to work instead of taking the bus. I cooked real meals again. I laughed, awkwardly at first, at bad sitcoms and my own burned toast. One evening, while cleaning out an old drawer, I found the wedding ring Ethan had refused to take during the divorce. For a moment, nostalgia tried to seduce me. Then I remembered the photo, the hands, the bed, the silence, and dropped the ring into a donation box. Let some stranger melt it down. Let it become anything but what it was. A week later, Dad visited. He'd moved into a small cottage near the coast. We sat on the porch watching gulls slice through the air. Do you ever miss her? I asked. Every day, he said. But missing someone and needing them are two different things. That sentence stayed with me. Eventually, I decided to visit the ocean alone. The wind was sharp. The waves sounded like applause and warning at once. I took Mom's letter from my pocket and let the salt air lift it from my hands. It spiraled upward, then down, until the sea swallowed it whole. I whispered, we're done. And for the first time, I felt it was true. Later that night, I sat on my balcony under string lights Ethan had once hung and realized how still my heart was. Not cold, just still. That's what freedom feels like. Not joy, not excitement, just the quiet absence of panic. People often ask what forgiveness means after something like this. It means I can hear Noah's name without shaking. It means Ethan can live his miserable life without my hatred renting space in my head. It means Mom can find whatever peace she's still chasing, and I don't have to follow her there. I don't need an apology. I don't need closure. I already built it. When I look at my reflection now, I see all the versions of me that survived. The girl who was silenced, the wife who was betrayed, the woman who refused to stay broken. They're all standing together, finally on my side. Sometimes late at night, I imagine running into Ethan and Noah somewhere. A grocery store maybe, or a gas station off the highway. In my mind, they look older, smaller, tired. No words are exchanged. I just nod, pay for my things, and walk out into the daylight. That, I think, would be enough, because the opposite of betrayal isn't revenge. It's peace, and peace, at last, is mine. Blood isn't what makes us family. Choices, I finally chose myself, fade out.